Thank you, quite frankly, for your past service and for taking this on as a consideration. You've been asked to consider leading an agency right now that has very low morale, that has had systemic procurement problems, that has some recent very bad evaluations, and quite frankly uses wrong metrics in some of the ways that they're evaluating some of their own performance. So you have a task to do. That is not an easy thing to step into. It's not an easy assignment regardless, so I want to tell you thank you for your consideration for walking through this. And I want to just bounce a couple issues off some of your perspective things for you personally. Some of the metrics of evaluating the issue of conduct versus performance metrics and evaluations here. Whether the goal is to quickly get people through the line or to be able to evaluate for safety checks and such. I think we can do both, but right now we seem to be pushing on the speed side of it rather than on the safety side, and it's almost like we're lulling ourselves back to sleep again on some critical issues. So I want to talk about how you will adjust that as far as evaluation, and then I want to move from there, and if you want to go ahead and move to the morale issue of how you re-engage some really great folks. I mean, when I interact every week with the Oklahoma City TSA folks, there's some great folks that serve there and are really terrific servants of the nation. But the morale issues are terrible as we deal with nationwide. So if you want to talk about some of those, then we'll move on to some other issues.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I think you've hit on one of the key concerns is the care of the workforce and the training of the workforce and the morale of the workforce. I mentioned in an earlier question that was about this very same issue. I said, to me, morale starts with an important mission. So we already have that. This is an important mission, a clear sense of that mission, and a dedication of the leadership of the agency to performing that mission. And so when you talk about the potential disconnect between what's being measured and what's most important, I think that's key to one fundamental aspect of morale. If I'm being told the most important thing I can do is protect the American public and to protect the traveling public, but I'm not being measured as to how I do that, then that's a disconnect right there. And my fear is that starts to breed cynicism in a workforce, and cynicism leads to low morale. So I get that completely. So the first thing you do is you focus back and you say, look, what's the most important thing we're doing out there? Why did you raise your hand and take an oath of office? These are great Americans. These are people, not many people do that in this country. So they're still among the 1% that say, you know, I want to serve my nation. And you deserve to support them in doing that. So next comes training. You've got to train them, and you've got to continually train them and get them in that continual learning process so that they can do the mission.
So if I can interrupt, how is that different than what's happening now? What's the change that has to happen? Because all those things are occurring now.
Well, I think that I'm not sure that, I think that over time it's very easy for an organization to shift focus, to think they have the mission right, and then to work on other things. So I think you can never stop referring back to it. What I found in my service in the Coast Guard is that you can have, even in a high morale organization like the Coast Guard, we can have pockets of low morale. And what causes it? It's when it's the day you get even a little complacent at the leadership level and you think you've got it right. No one gets tired of being reminded how important their job is, and no one gets tired of being trained to do that job, and no one gets tired of fielding good and learning how to use equipment, and no one gets tired of engaging with their organization and telling you where they think they could do it better. So I think it's engagement with the workforce. That's an ongoing, continuous. It can't just be a one-time thing. Right. You can't think you got it right because you held a meeting with them and you moved on. Annual surveys are good places to figure out where you need to start engaging more effectively, but they don't answer the question for you. They raise all the questions.
Right. Yeah, both your hiring and your training there makes a big difference because they work in very close quarters with each other.
That's
and
right.
If there are a couple bad apples in a group, it's really difficult for everyone in the group. And so just managing personnel and placement and
That's
attitudes there on the line make an enormous difference. Can we talk a little bit about procurement? This has been an ongoing issue. TSA has millions of dollars worth of equipment stored in warehouses, trying to figure out where to move old equipment, wrong equipment, determining the efficiency of equipment, when they're going to purchase something different. If it has a 2% gain in efficiency, is that enough? So there are lots of issues that involve billions of dollars in procurement nationwide. So talk to me as far as a change in attitude for you on that.
Well, in my current role, I serve as what's called the component acquisition executive for the Coast Guard. So I oversee the whole acquisition process for the Coast Guard. And that starts with the basic requirements. First of all, it starts with the mission and how that mission can be accomplished against what the threats are that keep us from accomplishing the mission. And then you begin to build the requirements that you need to accomplish that mission. Some of those are human requirements, some of those are equipment requirements, and those are interactive as you go through. And then you have to have an ability to translate those requirements into the actual thing that you need to buy. So there's a process that has to be in place. And what I've learned in the Coast Guard is we completely rebuilt our acquisition program over the past decade. We did not have one of the best acquisition processes in the government. I think we do have one of the best acquisition programs in the government now. And it's because we looked at it from start to finish. You can't simply walk out to industry and say, give me something that will do something. I don't blame industry for providing you things that don't work. They'll provide you what they have. And, but you need to really examine what it is. What do I actually need to know? So if you're looking at a piece of detection equipment, what do I need that thing to find? And then what are the limitations of the technology in order to find that, so that I can figure out what are the other requirements that go on top of it. So it's not just enough to have requirements for the equipment. You have to have the requirements for the things the equipment can't do, and those are combined. So all of that feeds into the procurement process, and then you need a rigorous process. So you have to adhere to the oversight, the controls, and the various programs. You have to separate the person who's writing the requirements from the person who's implementing the requirements, to the person who's overseeing the program, to the person who's contracting for the program. And the more separation you can have amongst those, the more rigorous you can hold that process. Otherwise, you're going to run into schedule breaches, you'll run into cost overruns.
And I would encourage you to evaluate the effectiveness of this equipment, not based on how it functioned in the laboratory in a sterile environment.
It has to be a real-world test.
But how it actually functions in the real world. That has been a problem. That we've got to have that real-world involvement on it. And with the Chairman's indulgence, just one quick comment as well. The pre-check issue, we have a lot of people coming through pre-check that are not really pre-checked. We're going to have to either change the name, because we've got millions of people going through that are really not pre-checked, or really focus on pre-check. And I'm not talking about other people, Trusted Traveler and all these other programs where they really have gone through a process. But it seems to be that we're increasing the number of people through it to get through and get efficiency, and we're losing some of the focus of what it's designed to do and what the actual security is designed to do at the airport and the other lanes here. So when we're trying to increase efficiency and losing our focus on security, I think it's a recipe for disaster on it. So pre-check should be pre-check and should have some kind of background on them, rather than just it's a random, or we think, or they meet some sort of profile. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. I yield back.
Thanks, Senator Lankford.